edit myself out.
There you go. Edit yourself out.
And at the same time, I'm actually going to set up a voice recorder just in case that crashes or something, because you can never have too many backups, right?
Right.
All right. So I'll be standing, I guess. But as Colleen said, I work for Ithaca. Like half of the people who are here are from there, or know intimately of it at least. So hopefully, I don't have to spend too much time explaining what it is we do. We are an online archive of academic journals. I am actually a Java developer. I'm not a Scrum Master currently, which makes it probably an interesting point for me to be talking about the Scrum process. But I am actually a certified Scrum Master. I worked as a Scrum Master for 3.5 years for Comcast, and additionally I worked as what they call a small team lead on an ops team, which is basically a Scrum Master for an operations team, for another 1.5 years. So I do have some Scrum Mastering experience. It's just I'm not currently doing that. I'm currently a developer. So let Dan introduce himself. Dan, please. Sorry, we didn't see this, Dan. Tonight we're talking about how to shake things up, which was the tentative name that was given to it months ago. The idea for the discussion that I wanted to have was, I think we've all been on Scrum teams where you're doing iterations, and eventually you kind of get into a stride, and at some point in time, maybe not everyone's had this, it's a little bit less common than it could be, which is a good thing, but at some point in time, teams stop coming up with ideas for how to keep improving. They either get comfortable with where they are, or maybe they get dissatisfied with where they are, but one way or the other, the ideas for improvement stop flowing, and that becomes really difficult to, how do you keep improving, which is one of the major points of the process, if you're not getting any feedback on how to keep improving. That was the idea behind it. I'm not entirely sure how to shake things up is entirely the right title for this, but it's the one we came up with, and it's pretty good. I thought about renaming it Techniques for Keeping the Retrospective Lively or Helpful, but then it occurred to me that sometimes shaking things up actually isn't helpful, but that's actually a good thing in the long run. So, what's that?
It's a catchy title.
Yes. I did blatantly steal that title from some blogger on the Scrum Alliance. But it was a good title, so I was like, I'll give her credit in the notes. I don't remember what her name is. So, in any case, just going over, I want to focus on the retrospective specifically because that really is the core of where we look for improvement in the Scrum process. I have written here, the goal of a sprint is to produce a small but anticipatable amount of quality customer-facing features in a small and definitive time. The goal of the retrospective is to produce a team that is more capable of completing a better sprint. And by that, I mean improvements to the deliverables, improvements to the process, and improvements to the employee morale. Those are, as far as I'm concerned, the 3 important areas of a retrospective, and I think it's not uncommon for us to forget about 1 or 2 of those areas when we go into retrospectives. So I have a set of bullet points that are just things that we could talk about that are problems I've noticed with 1 or more of those, as well as a small list of possible ways that a Scrum Master or even just a team member can try to step in and kick the process a little bit to get ideas flowing and look for improvement. That said, like I said, I have an outline, but I did mean for this to be a completely interactive discussion, so I really want people to talk back at me. Otherwise, you're going to just sit here listening to me ramble for probably far longer than I should. So, does anyone have anything to throw in now, or shall I just throw out a point and see where we go?
Throw a point out.
All right. how many points do I have total? I think I figured out about 8 reasons. Yeah, a total of 8 reasons that retrospectives stop being productive. And they're not in any particular order. But the first one I have to bring up is team members can't remember or are poorly remembering areas for potential improvement. I don't know about anybody else's teams. Our teams typically do a 2-week sprint, and then due to bizarre factors, sometimes the retrospective is a couple days later, sometimes as much as a week later if you get holidays in there and weird sprints and whatnot. And sometimes by the time you actually get to the retrospective, remembering those minute details that happened 3 weeks ago that, you tripped over and you lost an hour or two here or there, and yeah, that hour or two was significant, but is it significant enough to remember for 3 weeks when you've got a ton of other stuff going on?
So you normally retro once per sprint?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That is another good point to bring up. My assumption is that we all know the basic format of a retrospective, and that we generally retrospect once a sprint. If you retrospect twice a sprint or once every other sprint, cool. You have a different experience from the rest of us, please talk.
Yeah. So on my team, the way this happens to work, our releases are about 3 to 4 weeks a piece.
Okay.
And we usually retro every week, right? Friday's kind of our cadence day of the week, and so we retro every week.
Cool. That's I've thought about seeing if our team would like to retrospect once a week. It hasn't been necessary for us yet on this particular team, but I do think that's a really cool idea. I'm a huge fan of that.
Especially with the longer sprint.
Yeah.
Question, do you have actual stakeholder demos where you demo the code and then is it just a matter of scheduling where you can carve out the time to demo the same day?
Different from the retrospective.
No, I know.
The sprint review is outward facing, the retrospective
I
is
know
inward
that.
facing.
I'm saying schedule them on the same day.
Because we have so many teams and we try to get the demos all on the same day, and there's a lot of members who have a reason to be at more than one demo. It's not always possible. It's actually, I'm not sure it's ever possible to schedule the retrospective on the same day as the demo for us. So we end up in a situation where the retrospective gets pushed out because you don't want to hold the retrospective before the demo. Then things happen. Like I said, it's usually on our team it's 2 days after the sprint ends that we have the retrospective, but there are times that goes longer. I don't think that's that uncommon of a problem, and I say I don't think that's that uncommon of a problem because it's happened in the 3 places that I've done sprint work, and if I search for that problem online, there's a ton of people who have it. So I figured I'd throw it out there because chances are good someone else here has had that problem where you get to the retrospective and nobody remembers what happened.
And David, it is a common issue, and one suggestion I heard, and I haven't tried this myself yet, my teams are so distributed, but one suggestion I'd heard was on a board, get a board up in your Agile area and just have a kind of a running tally of kind of an ongoing retrospective so people could remember, oh yeah, today we lost a couple hours because we had this major production problem, or there was something else that occurred that caused something that went positive, to write it down. So that indeed in those 2 or 3 weeks later you would remember, you could go back to it and then review it again as a group.
Retro, in that case, might even take the form of, okay, let's gather around that board and review the good, bad, and negative, change or whatever.
And you know what? There's a time every day when we gather around that board, isn't there?
That's what I was going to say. That's one solution my team has kind of come up with is we every time we move our stickies or little index cards, say we were working on this. If it stays up there for too long, and we keep track of how long it stays up there with little check marks and whatnot, the Scrum Master says, well, why is this taking so long? And if you say something negative, it gets written on the board somewhere. Like that's a really good way of doing it. All of our boards are whiteboard wall paint, so we can just write on the wall. But that's pretty much the same idea. It's just quick documentation.
And by the way, whiteboard ball paint is an excellent retro point. Because what gets in the way of recording stuff is not having a place to record it.
Enough whiteboards.
So a pad of sticky notes or a whiteboard or
just write stuff.
Yeah.
Just write stuff.
Hopefully not so much that it just becomes a giant pile of notes that nobody ever looks at again, but especially if you can make an area to write things down.
So I don't know if this is on your list. You want the interaction? I'll give you the interaction. So at least one of the teams that I'm involved with, our Scrum Master says, well, we want to do a retrospective this sprint, and everybody's like, yeah, no, we're fine.
I do actually have that point on my list. And you're going to make me scroll all the way to the bottom of my list now, because that's point number 8, was that the retrospective itself has become of questionable value.
I'm not sure whether it's a questionable value or whether people just don't want to do it.
Well, I kind of lump that all into the same thing. But yeah, I mean, because you're more or less looking at it from the perspective of, is it worth my time? Or, does it actually contribute anything to this process?
Right.
I definitely have a number of ideas on how to do that, but any people have that issue? Want to speak up?
It's potentially.
That perhaps if team's giving you that feedback, say, okay, well, then let's talk about how we can make the retrospective.
Yes!
Let's retro.
Better, right.
Retro the retro. I like it. Well, no, it's a really good point. You should be able to retro your retrospectives. The fact of the matter is, if the retrospective itself is not being useful, why? There's got to be a good reason for it.
And I'll have to comment that I've seen it in kind of 2 cases. One, when a team is very new to Agile, right, and they kind of don't get what this retrospective is. They don't know that they're going to get anything out of it. Maybe they're not seeing benefits yet. They're shy. They just don't know what to say, right? So there's a lot of quiet to very new teams, as well as the teams who've been doing it for a while who just feel like, yeah, we're great. No, there's no problems. I can't think of anything wrong. Yeah, okay, we're done. Can we go home now? I want to get back to my whatever.
We're fine. No
Right.
problems here.
Right, so it's kind of on 2 ends, and I know the early end, it's the challenge to get people to speak up, right, to feel that you really can make a difference and to start building that trust that, well, you said this was wrong, we actually did something different, and we should try to improve it the next time around.
See, the reason I had that one as an 8th point is because all of the previous 7 points kind of address a lot of that. So, way to make me jump at that semester, thank you.
Well, that's just the first thing I thought.
That's a perfectly good thing.
So in your retrospective, do you have in my team, we had 45 minutes where everybody got some sticky notes, and we sat quietly and wrote it all down. When you thought went well, and somebody's birthday, when you didn't do, then you talked, we grouped them all together and talked about it and here. But our team was used to doing that on a regular basis, and we actually got action out of those sticky notes, and somebody had to keep track of it. And we actually grouped.
Oh yeah.
We had a list of stuff. So okay, you're doing all that.
Oh yeah. So the way our team, or the way my team, I don't know if all of the teams at our company do it the same way, but it's a variant of the plus delta, which is the plus delta is basically saying what went well and what needs to change. We do a variant where it's what went well, what didn't go well, and what would you like to try in the future. And the entire idea behind the what didn't go well is to drive ideas into what would you like to try in the future. But we also give people just the opportunity to say, I'd like to try this. I have no reason, but I want to try. So that's our current strategy. There are actually a ton of different ways to do retrospectives, but that's a pretty common one.
And giving everybody a chance to sort of take some time ahead of time to get their thoughts down without being influenced by the people around them can also be. I mean, for me, I see 2 things happening there. One is you don't get the Me Too effect. The people who are maybe shy get a chance to have their say because they're writing it on a sticky note. They don't have to say it out in front of everybody, trying to interrupt or whatever. And if several people write down the same thing, then that
several people actually felt that way.
Its impact, because they're not getting the Me Too, they're thinking of it independently. So that was 3 things that I said to talk
We also do it so it's anonymous, so you can write the note. Nobody has to cop to being the one who wrote that note.
Like you don't recognize people's
Right.
Yeah. Well, actually half of our team works remotely, so the Scrum Master gets to write all of their notes. So, but as it turns out, most of the time, when we write something down on the sticky, we care enough about it that we actually want to speak about it. So even though we're sort of anonymous, we never say anonymous. Any other? I can keep going forward with alternate ideas here. Let's see. So one of the reasons teams might not come up with I'm going to refer to them as actionable commitments. I meant to talk about this a little bit before going into everything. When we come up with actionable items at the end of a retrospective, you don't actually want to commit to all of them. You might come up with 20 ideas, but it's usually not a good idea to just commit to all 20 of them. Let's see what happens. You want to commit to change everything. That's not a good idea. You want to commit to 1, 2, maybe 3 if they're really independent, actionable ideas, but you don't want to just throw everything in there. So, that's the distinction I'm going to make. Is an actionable idea is an idea that came out of the retrospective. An actionable commitment is something you're actually committing to trying. So in any case, sometimes when you're not getting actionable commitments, it's because the path from the negatives to the actionable ideas is not always intuitive. You may have a problem, and what are we going to do differently to solve that problem? And that's not always an intuitive path. Anyone have that problem? Anyone have any solutions?
Got the problem.
Okay.
And there's nothing to be done about it. There's stuff that is making it very difficult, and there's no path around it. So one of the reasons our team is very tired of the retrospective is because the same things could be brought up again and again, and nothing's going to change.
Which will actually bring me to that next point. But does anyone have anything on the no path from actionable or from problem to actionable?
So in my experience, and in general, I don't have a specific thing in mind at the moment, but when I look at something and say that's too big, I don't know how to get from here to there, then it's time to break it down into smaller steps. Okay, I don't know how to get there, but I know how to get here, and I think here is in the direction towards there. So let's try here and see what happens. And that's true whether I'm developing code or
Developing processes.
shoveling my driveway or whatever. Sometimes I just need to do it in smaller pieces. Paying off my freaking credit cards, okay? I would like to just be able to, plug down a whole bunch of money and be done with it, and that ain't gonna happen, But if I can figure out, a step to pay off one of them, well, then that's a step towards the place where I want to be. And the whole journey looks hopeless, but that one step is possible.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great strategy towards getting big problems out of the way.
In your experience, so we were talking about the actionable items, right? So, so when you come up with you may brainstorm a dozen ideas, but say in your experience, 2 or 3 of them are ones that you committed to. And presumably, those have people's names to them or so on. Because in my experience, the things that we write down that no one says, "Yeah, I'll do that,"
They're not
going to get done.
Yeah, they're not commitments anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when I say commit to something, it usually means someone's name is associated with it. It may be an entire team-wide change, but at least one person gets to be, responsible for, actually trying to hold the team to making that change. And it's like a lot of things. We try to do it in a blameless way. The person who's taking that responsibility on is usually someone who actually cares about that change being made, and not someone who's just getting stuck with it and doesn't care one way or the other. But at the same time, we're saying as a team, we're taking these items on, and as an individual person in charge of it, that person is also taking it on. And then, another really good point that I haven't brought up now, but it's a really good idea to go back over your actual commitments that you've made in past scripts and say, well, we said we were going to do this change. Did we? Did it have the effect we wanted? Because a lot of times it doesn't. Sometimes you're like, I'm going to commit to doing this thing, and you do it 100%, and nothing changed.
So the first team I did retros with, I mean, they became complaining sessions, which isn't necessarily bad per se, except that no action ever came out of them, and finally people gave up, right? So had
Yes.
I don't think that's unusual.
You got the old OODA loop there.
Yep, that's definitely a pretty well-known problem. There are lots of great, well, I shouldn't say lots of great solutions to it because it's kind of a bad situation to be in to begin with.
Yeah.
But there are certainly solutions to it. I don't remember where I put them on my list. So anyone have solutions to everyone complaining? Oh yeah.
Hi guys. Hey, Dave, you're the solution to everybody
Well, I mean,
I apologize all for being late. I didn't make it. So.
There's the STFU solution, but that doesn't scale very well.
Yeah.
Right.
Further damages throughout, yeah.
Well, I guess it's if everyone starts complaining, if it becomes this gripe session, and have you tried yes, that's a valid complaint, what can we do to change that? Is there anything, how, like Spencer was saying, something small that we could start changing? Pick something, if it's a gripe session that, management never listens to us, or they keep giving us these ridiculous deadlines. What little thing can we do to start to make that better? And try to engage the team. Because I think that is a challenge, and it may be one of the things that, whether it's the Scrum Master and helping to facilitate the discussion, or certainly the whole team that owns, having a good discussion out of that, is kind of breaking that cycle. Right? So someone's got to get in there and try to shake up that gripe session.
It's not always the Scrum Master who's the one who steps in, because sometimes the Scrum Master is just as caught up in that gripe session as anyone else.
Yeah.
Sometimes, any random person who's in that room has to be the one to step up and say, you know what, let's focus on this one particular complaint that we all agree we have, because clearly we keep talking about it, and let's figure out one little step of a solution we can take on this one complaint, and stop worrying about everything else just for the next 45 minutes.
Yep.
Just let's focus on this one thing. And, I bring that up solely because, sometimes the Scrum Master gets caught in those things too.
Yeah.
And I think sort of the deltas and actually keeping track afterwards of what happens with the deltas is one of the keys to that as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is bad, therefore we're going to do X, and we're going to go check up that X got done.
Yes.
Yeah.
That X got done, and did it have the result that you wanted?
Yeah.
If there's some way to get a metric on did it actually produce something, that's awesome. A lot of times it's not, because you're dealing with like really fuzzy concepts. You don't get to just randomly make up metrics about that kind of stuff. But it is really great when you can, because you can say, well, this is the amount of effort we put into this, and this is the change we got out of it, and that's totally worth it. Or, no, that was a waste of time.
And sometimes gripes get ignored because they sound petty, and people go, oh man, that's just whoever, and gloss over it. But they can point to underlying problems. For instance, on one team I was on, one guy kept saying over every retrospective, he'd say, well, QA keeps making me set these things up. Every single time, and everyone's like, oh God, he said it again, and ignored it. And what really should have been addressed was the fact that there was no clear expectation or understanding about the expectations of how we move our work from development to QA and how we make sure that our work is testable for QA and that sort of thing. And because it was a gripe, that just never got
Right,
addressed.
the conversation is, well, why does QA think they need you to set something up?
Yeah.
Is there something you can do ahead of time so that you don't need to be asked to set stuff up? Or is there something that within the QA group that they could actually take some ownership or part of that setting? I mean, There's a lot of different things when you can ask about that once you start paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And that's me going into problem solving mode right away, so.
I feel like this entire half of the room is being really quiet.
Sean and I are sitting over here, I'll go over there.
Problem solved.
Well, it's a small change, we can see what difference it makes.
Sure, I think you should. Because my theory is it's because the camera's pointed at that side, so they don't notice anything. So I have two competing theories. We should test each hypothesis and see which one is right. So go ahead, Spencer, move. You do one first.
That's not technically a complaint.
I guess it was. I thought it was pointing out a problem and looking for a solution. But
Very good.
Suggestion. So I don't know how ingrained everyone is on your team is in their role, but what we did at one of my jobs is we rotated the Scrum Master responsibility. So every 6 months, somebody else had to be the Scrum Master. So everybody kind of knew, nobody, some liked it, some didn't. And because everybody was going to have to do it, people were more inclined to actually follow through, do the things that were suggested in the retrospective, and there's just a little bit more accountability because you really don't want to screw your other teammate who's, it's his turn for being the Scrum Master. You really don't want to make him look bad. So that was kind of the way that we did it.
I've been on a team that literally took those activities, and let's say it was 6 different activities that the Scrum Master would run on the team. Just say a team 10 would rotate every sprint. Somebody did one of those things, so it was even more fluid. It was continuously pick up that thing. Okay, I'm in the, and they even made funny names from the one that always stuck in my head was the Jira jerk.
Because it goes through Jira and says, why is it still open?
Yeah, he was the guy that picked up our never stopped getting called. So finding those pieces that take motivation, but somebody got to do it.
We also had a Sprinter of the Sprint Award, so it was an online poll, and you voted for who made the biggest impact in your sprint, and they made up prizes. So one team had a gold-painted monkey wrench. The servicing team had one of these creepy ring hand things where you have to put the rings on this plastic hand with a phone in it, and then you just voted the prizes. And you voted, so people were striving to, I want to win Sprint of the Sprint.
I think we can all agree that envy of a creepy hand holding a phone is
Oh my God, it was
a very real thing.
It was the best.
Yeah, we actually have full-time Scrum Masters now.
Yeah.
That's all they do.
Yeah, as I say, that would be the problem where a problem and or solution of where we are is they're, full-time, they're dedicated to it, and they're really not interchangeable with any of the other parts for the most part.
And I, for one, am glad that I never have to be the Jira guy.
Yeah.
The Jira jerk, is that what you call it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What is that?
So, in our teams, the role of the Sprint Master is to remove impediments from the way of the developers and QA engineers who are doing the work of the sprint. And we're a development shop, if it was, a factory, maybe removing impediments, or the people who are on the machines, or stocking, or whatever it is that they're doing. That's their primary role, and that encompasses a whole bunch of tasks, which I think vary somewhat from one team to another. But it involves Jira, hygiene. It involves measuring progress. It involves saying, "Hey, this thing's been open for a long time. Are we going to do this?" It involves calling all the meetings. Yeah.
How is that not the same as the Scrum Master?
Scrum Master, that's what I meant, Scrum Master.
Oh, okay, thank
Sorry,
you.
my
I heard,
vocabulary bad.
I heard Sprint Master and I went, whoa, okay.
Scrum Master, yeah.
Thank you.
I actually really like that title, though. To me, that's more of what the person
Yeah.
does rather than Scrum Master. I'll say Scrum Master.
Because the Scrum is like one part of it.
People that don't know what Scrum is, they
Sprint is the overall process. Well,
Yeah.
at least a larger chunk of the process.
And some of our Scrum Masters have a whole lot of Jira food.
This is true, they do.
Okay.
other boards? Let's see. Oh, so one interesting one that I've come up with, reasons that there's no actionable item resulting from a problem that occurred is because, we already learned our lesson from that, it won't happen again.
Oh.
I hear you laughing. I see lots of heads nodding. Anybody have ideas on how we can, this is one of the ones I actually don't have a good answer for, so I was really hoping people would speak up.
So it was, we fixed it, it won't happen again?
Yeah!
That, we're good?
That's not what he said, though. He said, we learned our lesson from
Right.
that, it won't happen again.
Learned our
Not
lesson.
fixed it.
Right,
Okay,
yeah, it's not we fixed it, but we learned our lesson from that.
I'm never going to do that again.
Right. Oh, I thought it would only take me an hour to write that JSP, and it took, a day and a half. Well, lesson learned, that won't happen again.
So I'm curious, this to me breaks down to a human nature context.
Of course.
And the funny personal relation story I just got through text message today was my son, 8.5 years old, pulled out his Cub Scout pocket knife and cut his finger today.
Oh.
And the wife texted right now, like, so did he learn his lesson? Yes, blah, blah, blah. And she referenced back, did you ever learn that lesson? I'm like, I've learned that lesson 1,000 times. Don't run your finger along a sharp knife to see if it's sharp. Right? So it's where some things you won't, but obviously the barriers you can put to prevent that from happening. Right? So the lessons will always be learned. It's how painful are they? Right? I don't jam my thumb on the knife now. It's a slight little thing, right? So find ways to make it less painful for the person. They are going to be learned.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think you need to when somebody says, "Oh, we've learned it, and it's not going to happen again," you have to explore, and how is this knowledge going to be institutionalized or put into a procedure such that it won't happen again?
This is why butchers wear chainmail gloves.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
There's, I write down when I'm doing something that I know is kind of tricky. I write down everything about it, and then when I have to do it again, I go through and I go over the documentation again because I know my brain, I know its limitations, and I don't want to have to rely on remembering things. So there's no way I want to be responsible for having learned the lesson. I want the process to stop me from doing it again.
So another, I think, piece that might play into this would be keeping track of it. I encourage my team to keep retro notes, right? To keep track of what they talked about in the retro. I discourage bringing that in, and that's the first thing you talk about in the next retro. Because then you say, oh, we have a communication problem, and everybody agrees, yes, we still have a communication problem. It's like, okay, what was the other problem we had that we aren't going with? So don't take it, but use that for reference. So I would take that as the lead. At some point, look back over 3, 4, 5 sprints and say, okay, we have this common problem around this mode of communication, or perhaps one of those common complaints that we might see. Having the record there to know, okay, we're obviously not getting better at it. What can we do different this time? Because the things that we're doing now.
Yeah, I know. I definitely think having a record. And I like what you said about not bringing it in to every retrospective, because it's not an actionable item that you committed to. It's just it's an artifact of it that lets you examine the process as it's gone.
Exactly.
Practice of reading the minutes of the last meeting at the beginning of the next meeting.
Then you'll talk about everything you talk about.
That is one of the best ways to make it completely more or less.
So do you think we should all that define the same problems keep coming up again and again in everyone's retrospectives?
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
We could take that poll.
And I can probably find some common themes.
Yeah. I'd be curious about that, the common themes and the common solutions.
Sure. In order to take a poll, I have to have ideas to poll on. Either that or we can all write stickies, and I didn't bring stickies. But I'd imagine we can find some around here somewhere.
Stickies here, yeah.
Or collect
No, actually, I like that idea. So if everybody wants to grab a sticky pad and write some common problems you have, at least that way we can kind of focus this discussion.
And a Sharpie feels very familiar.
We don't have one at your station, we have one over here.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, categories?
Sort of. They didn't group as much as I was hoping.
There's lots all over.
Yeah, there's,
All moving on to our own unique problems.
yeah. Let's see. Is the biggest category 3?
That's what. Look, yeah. Wasn't it commitments? Not
Yeah.
meeting commitments. Yeah.
Okay. So the biggest complaint seems to be 3 different people saying lack or not meeting commitments or stories not being completed within the sprint. Put it up there. Maybe we'll write around it. That'll work. So what do people think about that particular problem?
Not really an issue with the retrospective, but it's an issue of,
Well, it's an issue that comes up in the retrospective.
Right.
Yeah, it's an issue that comes up in the retrospective, and I think part of the idea of this particular discussion was, not just problems that can be, of making the retrospective better, but ways of fixing specific problems that do come up in the retrospective. Which I'm all for that. I actually had an entire category about, hey, try these generic solutions that might actually work for you. So I will say, as far as meeting commitments go, usually that tends to be a problem of not understanding the team's velocity, either that or too much top-down pressure to get too much done.
Which I know I had a couple of stickies that relate to various aspects of that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I didn't, but maybe we didn't get them in
What
there.
about unrealistic expectations from management or customers?
Yeah.
I think it's
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Did
did
it-
see that.
Which is certainly a factor in not meeting commitments.
Yes.
Especially if those commitments are
Unrealistic.
placed upon you rather than made by you.
Yeah, we can call it in there because that's definitely, it's
Right. And in some
it's
cases,
kind of a factor of it, but yeah. So to deal with that specific problem first, how do teams go about fixing that?
Huh.
How do you fix upper management?
So I guess the experience that I've had is that it's not something you fix right away.
Yeah.
There's a process of changing expectations of making commitments that you know you can meet and then meeting them on a consistent basis so that your management or your customer, whoever it is that's wanting to get the larger body of work done, comes to understand that you actually know how much work you can do, that you're being realistic because, so many people have heard for so long, oh, that's going to take, 3 times as long as you think it's going to take or whatever, but without any evidence.
Right.
And so for me, and again, in my experience, that providing an evidence-based over a period of time, I'm missing it down there, I know I'm missing it down, okay, but it's a problem with gray hair, it sucks all the nouns out of my head.
evidence-based velocity.
Something,
Something like that. Okay.
That they actually believe that when you say you can do
Yeah,
something, you can do it, and when you say you can't do something, you can't do it.
Right.
And then that could lead into a conversation about, well, what can we do that
Yep.
meets, your minimum needs or whatever.
And that's when I was a Scrum Master, I was actually in a very similar situation to that. Believe it or not, Comcast puts a lot of pressure on their employees. And I was getting that same thing where, there's so much, you have to do all of this stuff in this amount of time. And the way I eventually got around it was I stood up to my boss and I said, look, I can either tell you that I can get all of that done in that amount of time, and we both know it's a lie, Or I can tell you how much I can get done in that amount of time, and we can try really, really hard to hit it, and it will most likely not be a lie, and you can prioritize the work that you actually want done in that amount of time, so that I'm not doing these little side projects that you don't actually care about but think you do.
But isn't that the whole point of having the product owner with you during this process, so they can
Yes.
see this kind of gap between real, behavior and expectations, so that they can be the ones taking that message back and managing
Yes.
expectations?
Yes, and actually I meant to say product owner, not manager. My manager was only happy that I was doing good code. It was the product owner who was saying, I need this much done in this amount of time, and that was the person who I basically needed to say to, have some trust in this process. Let me figure out what our velocity is, and I will accurately tell you how much we can get done in a given amount of time within like 90% accuracy rate, as opposed to a 0% accuracy rate on you telling me what you think needs to be done in the next month.
So I approach teams with two concepts. You can be the team that overcommits and underdelivers, and you can talk with that saying we just always have stretch goals and we're trying to get there. And that's great, because we're getting stuff done and that's the goal. It pushes people a little harder sometimes. There's humors, right? We undercommit, but then we always overdeliver. We say we're going to do this and we give you a little bit extra because that's how we roll. The key to that is the realistic expectations set for that. And that's where I ask you, okay, which way do you want to be? And let's get that established, and then let's try to figure out how we can let the product owners, the management, whoever it might be, know that that's our goal. So we set it up front that, okay, we're always not going to meet our commitment. We're always going to have some rollover, because that's what we're stretching for. That's our striving effort. Or it's the inverse. You can always just give us that little bit extra once we know we have some room to take a little bit extra. So two ways you can look at that too.
With regard to selling, the product owner on, giving you a more finite set of goals that's actually achievable, a really great thing you can say to them is, look, I can tell you I can get all this done, but when it comes right down to it, that you're leaving it up to me to prioritize that work, and I know you're not going to get it all. So how much do you trust my prioritization skills, or would you rather do it?
There is some context. It's usually not that setting of expectations, but the realistic context around meeting those expectations is a level of trust.
Yes.
Right, that you have to establish. The sooner you can establish it, the better off you are. But I always have a premise that I trust but validate. And I have to tend to validate too much in the team who says, well, why don't you trust us? I'm like, I do trust you. I just want to validate it, because as soon as I know that it's wrong, I'm going to try to fix it. Yeah. So, some balance of that too.
I like that. It's good. Trust but validate. Is what?
It's a Russian program.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is one of the Russian leaders that told Reagan, I guess, that he
Huh.
can't.
Is that where it came from?
Yeah.
I knew it came from somewhere.
But is
Now I
it
finally-
also validated?
Trust but verify.
Verify, Verify.
Cool.
I was going to add to that one of the ways to be able to have that discussion as well with management, I think you're saying this all implicitly, is that, you'll have some metrics. Generally, we get so many either story points done or stories done, or you have this metric that you work with, and you're tracking it over time. And that's one of the things that I've been doing with this new team that I have, is I've been tracking their progress over time. How many are we getting done each sprint? So I've got this history. It's like, and then when management comes and says, well, I want 3 times that done, we have to get, I'm like, here's our history. I don't see that we're going to make a magic jump in 1 week to get 3 times the work done. So prioritize what you want to work on.
Right.
And that is, it's part of that. Have the hard data there, have history there, and then have that good discussion of, who really wants to prioritize. And I agree, it should be your product owner, not us. not the Scrum Masters picking it.
Any other key themes?
There's one that I want to roll into from this, but if anyone else has more to say about it, I want to hear them out. Nope, okay. So there's one on here somewhere that said estimates are not accurate.
There's estimation.
Estimation problems. I thought I saw a couple
bet you
others,
did.
but
It's the pink one. I wrote all of them.
oh, we have this one. Oh no, this one.
Orange.
Problems estimate, there it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Problems with estimating points. I'll put that kind of like here-ish because you have a couple things written on that one. So estimation problems.
I've seen this happen in two ways. One is not having a consistent baseline for estimating fraud. Okay, when I first started doing Agile with story points, we picked a story. So this is the 3-point story. Everything else gets compared to it. And it was one that everybody could kind of visualize how much work went into it. And I've been on other teams that don't have a baseline story. And it's sort of like, well, you know, like 8 points is kind of like a day. No, wrong. You're not going to get consistent estimation that way.
Yes.
Okay. The other problem that I've seen is where one person does all the estimating, and everybody else just goes with it.
I don't think I've ever even seen that.
You get a very strong person on the team who is sort of viewed as the leader of the team, and that one person does the estimating, and everybody's like, yeah, that's good, okay, move on. Those are the two ways I've seen for estimation to go back. Oh, the third way is you don't do estimates.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a pretty good way on estimates.
So no estimates is a way.
Yeah.
There are ways that's actually good. Now I have a premise, and I'm growing more and more to like it. And it's basically the fact that all estimates are BS.
Yeah, I mean, the team I'm on is doing small, medium, large estimates.
They're
Right.
always wrong.
Yeah, sure, they're always wrong.
Always wrong.
They're always wrong?
Always.
You'll find a rarity that they get it spot on. Almost
Don't ever
always
assume you're
wrong.
right.
Every once in a while we get lucky and we're wrong under. Most of the time we get wrong and that it's something bigger. So
Now, are you talking as far as estimates like direct time or story points?
either.
Really?
Yes.
Because usually I find, in my experience, story points have, I mean, when you start with a new team, they're all over the board. But over the course of 2 months, usually they kind of plateau to a point where you can actually reasonably predict the number of story points you're going to get in a given amount of time. And you leave yourself a little bit of a buffer, but usually...
Part of that is the law of large numbers.
Yes.
Correct.
So if you do enough estimates, some will be small, some will be big, and it'll add
Oh,
up
yeah.
to a reasonable amount.
And that's actually a common goal for it, is they do wash up, and that's okay. That actually benefits the fact that they're almost always
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was going to say. They're almost always wrong, but somehow on average they end up
they
right.
equal out. Yes. So there's just a premise that says, okay, and there's actually names who I know jumps in my group here sometimes. He's a very big believer in no estimation because it's not going to work. It never does. It puts us in holes that we end up having to dig ourselves out.
So how does he decide how much to put into a sprint?
He knows, understands what the team can do, and relies on the team. Now he puts a lot of trust in his team to say, here's these 5 cards, can you get this done in the time frame that's allowed?
That's a lot of
And it's part of keeping the history. I mean, I've been doing that as well because I find that I just spend so much time. There's so much overhead in estimating,
It's the
and I always
overhead,
ask, why do you want me to estimate if I'm not billing work out, right? If I'm an internal team and we're building internally, why am I spending this time estimating, worrying about story points or hours or T-shirt sizes? And it all comes down to, well, I need to know how many stories to bring into the sprint. So sure, my first 1 or 2 sprints, it's a crapshoot. But after that, I start getting history. And I've got history now. I've got history for a couple months, and I know how many we're getting done in a sprint. I said, that's what we're going to get done.
So you just counted stories.
I'm just counting stories. So yes, the stories I have to make. I don't want stories that are epic in size, right? So the stories have to be all more nominally sized that we can get them done in a sprint. And by this time, the team's getting the sense of how much can you get done, how long is a sprint, how much can I get done, and they're beginning to write stories and commit to things that are smaller. We are still one of those having that issue, but it's just, I don't think estimating will solve it for me either.
I think
I'll just
estimates
be
are
more
always going to
overhead.
be a little bit off.
Yeah.
So, like, I've never assumed that, that's going to be the number to be. I always, when I was a Scrum Master, always planned in a 10% barrier, even when I had a team that had been going for a year. There's always a 10% waiver. One thing I'm curious about, if you don't do estimates, there's a really key part of the process that you may miss out on, that I'm curious if you have some other solution, which is when I go to estimate something, half my team says it's 3 points, the other half say it's 20 points. There's something that one team group knows that the other group doesn't.
True.
So that is
Again, and so it triggers that conversation.
It triggers the
Yep.
conversation.
Exactly.
Yep, that's true.
You end up
That's
with
when
a
the
design
frustrating
discussion, and
starts.
someone
Right.
says,
So-
oh no, this is really simple, this is how you could do it, and everyone says yes, or someone says, no, you forgot about this. And
Right.
everybody-
And that's a really
Collaboration
important
still
concept.
needs to happen,
Okay.
and it's a mechanism that probably then therefore happens as you plan for a sprint. Hey team, we're planning to do these 5 cards. Do we all agree that this is something we can commit to? And it puts, again, more of the onus back into the team and the trust, but takes away, I think, the biggest part of that is that I feel the time that gets wasted on trying to pinpoint an estimate when it's almost over.
I will say I've
There's
employed a couple different techniques as far as
Collaboration.
speeding up the estimate itself process.
That's
It's everybody votes for their number at the exact same time,
Yep.
and if we're within right currently we use the Fibonacci sequence up to 20, however that works out. If we're within 1 step of each other, or we just take the average. Like it's not worth arguing about 1 step.
Yeah.
But if the difference is 5 and 20, there's a real significant difference there. Can we settle on 8? Can we settle on 13? That's the discussion. But if it's between 5 and 13, maybe we say, okay, it's 8, fine.
Elaine, I'm curious, how much time do you save by just throwing that out the window?
Well, we have weekly sprints, so my end of sprint show and tell, plan, retrospective, and planning I do in an hour and a half each week. So for me, that's it. I can get all of that in that time with the team, and I've got a distributed team. They're calling in from overseas, and so I'm doing my best to try to keep the momentum there. But
And it's harder to do that. Everybody show you cards and kind of people feel.
yeah, right. So, but I still have struggles. But it's a new team, and we're still getting used to it. I spent time this week. One of my approaches, because I'm still not seeing that momentum that I'm looking for in that as a team that we're not getting. So I took time at the very beginning of our end of sprint planning session and just focused on one of the Agile manifesto concepts. I said working software. This is what we're after, and I kind of gave a few points and spent a little bit of time really bringing that point home, why we're doing it, why this working software is, how we deliver business value, what if we stop building this thing right now, is there anything we have, work in process is bad. I spend some time really focusing on one area. So it gives me a little bit of time to do some of that, to try to deal with some of the team challenges. I've actually been seeing this sprint go a little bit better. I'm hoping it's because I got a little, interest. But
so,
for
I
me,
think
that's it.
a different aspect of the same concern is the problems of estimation is that very often teams get so caught up in doing the work, they don't take the time necessary to revisit the estimations and say, now that we've learned some stuff, is this bigger or smaller, right? That's a big one facing the team I'm working with a lot now, in that they did a big, large estimation at the start, a bunch of hours, we converted it to points, twofold. One, we never really tracked the points scale, and what they thought was hours for points was really different in the spend versus what we thought. But secondarily, they didn't take the time along to revisit. So I've literally been halting progress with the team for the past couple, at least the last week, if not into the week before, of stop, slow down, give me some time to make sure we're looking at the rest of this. We're going back to governance now, and they need to know what we're thinking we can actually do in the time frame they thought we could get it. So that continual revisiting along the way saves a lot, keeps it cleaner than any kind of false swoop you have to do in a crisis.
If you're having trouble flipping cards remotely and you're using Jira, there's a plugin that does planning poker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as I say, there's a lot of ways to.
There's
get
got to
around
be an
it.
app
You can
for
actually
that.
just,
There's a website too.
yeah, you can private message just the Scrum Master, and they can hold up your points. Like there's a number of ways. To your point, I'm curious. Has anyone ever done a blameless post-mortem on an estimate? I've done it twice on the team I'm on now, And basically, it's when we walk into a task and we say, yeah, there's not going to be any problem with us getting this done this sprint. We're saying we get about 20 points per person per sprint, and we estimate it at an 8. And the end of the sprint rolls around. 3 people have been working on it the entirety of the sprint, and it's still not done. That is going up for a postmortem. We want to know what did we miss during the estimation process? What were we completely wrong about? And I say we've done that twice. It's an hour-long meeting for the team, which is kind of painful because we all hate being in meetings, but there's a lot of really good lessons that come out of it, and it hasn't happened since. Like, it happened the one time, and then it happened another time when we went to a completely brand new area. And as a result of that, the team has really kind of done a good job, remembering, oh, we need to think about these other things. So I think that's definitely a point in favor of estimates, because honestly, if we just said, hey, this is a task, we're going to get it done, how are we going to get it done? Well, our metric is fail. There's nothing. which in that particular scenario it's fine.
So that was sort of like you said, it was a medium, and it turned out to be a 2XL or something.
Right. Yeah, our estimate was way off, and yeah, while in the long run the points do kind of become a wash, when the estimate is that far off, sometimes you want to know why.
And if you've got a sticky up on the wall, you put a star on it every day, and
Yeah.
it becomes really obvious.
We don't estimate anymore on our team, largely because we are deadline driven. We're a service team for other teams in the building, so it's, you could be working on something and then all of a sudden, whoa, this is the new priority, get this done now, okay? So, it really, there's no commitment to what we can get done in a given amount of time because we are told our commitments.
Do you account for that as an injection and then drop something off the bottom of the priority list to compensate for it?
Essentially,
That'll
not
teach you
so
to inject stuff.
they don't care because it's somebody else's team who gets shafted.
Well, and to go on from what Sean said, that most of our teams are now in a DevOps role. We have deployed software that is running in production, and the team is responsible to keep that software running and to fix problems in that software. And so every single team now is having to allocate some portion of the work to operational problems. And some sprints, it's almost all operational. 2 of our guys spent the last 2 days dealing with an online attack. Okay?
Humorously enough, I'm actually on pager duty right now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it doesn't go off.
On the other hand, our team that had that problem the most at sort of the beginning of this project, which was the team building the platform infrastructure, in their sprint reviews, back when we were still reporting points in sprint reviews, they would say, this is how much planned work we got done, this is how much support work we got done. And it motivated them, because they were measuring it, it motivated them to do things that reduced the amount of support work they had to do. And I don't think that helps you, but it was a really interesting thing to see happen. Wow, we spent, 10 hours this sprint on this, on helping developers solve this problem. Let's plan some work in the next sprint so that developers can solve that problem by themselves, and we don't have to support that work anymore. And I think we may start to see that kind of thing coming out of all the teams with the DevOps role. It's like, wow, we're seeing the same problem in production over and over again. Maybe we should plan some work so that problem doesn't happen.
But now one difference I'll draw there is he said this work is coming from external to his team. In that case, the work is coming internal to the team. In other words, the people who are feeling the pain are the people who are capable of fixing it.
The Cypress team, that dev work is coming from outside. Now, that's why I said it doesn't really help your problem.
Right.
And especially because it's nothing that's repeatable. I mean, it's always, team A wants this particular bit of information once. And then team B goes, yeah, get us, describe how this works. And it's,
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's just got to be done.
Yeah, we're struggling with something similar to that, but just with a slightly higher visibility to where our product council has been setting these opportunities, and these opportunities are part of our go-to-market message that is really being driven by the executives for the first day of every quarter. So we will be launching something new the first day of every quarter, says the CEO. So here are your opportunities.
I think ultimately that still kind of comes down to that same basic point that if people are telling you how much work you're going to get done at a certain point in a certain amount of time, and you know it's not going to happen, then you have the opportunity to go to them and say, look, either I prioritize this work or you do. You know, give me an amount of work that I think that we are using metrics to say we're confident we can get this done in this amount of time, or leave it up to me to decide, or micromanage me, which is a pretty sure way to get an entire burnout. I really hope that there aren't a whole lot of organizations who are like, no, we'll just micromanage you. I know this still exists.
Yep. They're out there.
You got a lot more stickies on the table, don't you?
Yeah, that we do. Here's one I want to bring up because I think it'll get a good laugh, but it's actually a really serious point. Lack of donuts. It's always a funny one, but it's unbelievable how many forums you go on online, and it's providing food for a team is this absurdly silly little thing you can do, and yet it always has positive results.
It's amazing the results that you have. Right down to I bring chocolates at my stand-up. I have my little candy dish. I keep it filled. I bring it in, and it used to be the speaking token, but now it's just there in the middle, and everyone gets the candy, and they miss it if it's not there. I've had past teams that people have rolled off the team, and I meet them in the hallway, and they say, "Oh man, I really miss your meetings. You had the best food there. We need to have a meeting just so you can have some of the great baked goods." It's psychology. It works.
It really does.
Famously.
So anybody's not taking advantage of that, find a way to. Because
Right.
it's unbelievable the results you get out of it.
That's right.
Old comedians get somewhere along the line that he mentioned something to that effect. It's in the office, and it's like, "Hey, it's Bob's birthday." Yeah. There's cake in the cafeteria. Oh, I should probably go say hi.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cake will get you over
around
there.
that.
So.
Well, the remote team thing could be difficult.
That is a little challenge. Yeah. I keep telling them they need to have chocolate at their stand-up. So
That's the chocolate dish through the wire.
I know.
The team I'm on, we have 3 remote members, but they're just working from Troy, so it's not all that far.
Yeah.
So every time we have food in our office, our scrum master taunts them. Like, it's not that far. You could be here.
You could be here in an hour.
Just probably not the greatest way to get positive effects, but it's fun for the rest of us. So.
That's a very good point.
Let's see. What else do we have? Here is a good one. Team working items not in sprint or unplanned work. Such as prod problems. But I think we can all agree that unplanned work comes up, be it in prod or otherwise. And how do we ideas, fixes?
Knock that item off the bottom of your backlog and say, okay, you're prioritizing this. This
Right.
one's out. So this was our last priority in the sprint, so it's out. Next one.
So I find most often the hardest thing is that it's not actually represented. So to me, the biggest thing about the unplanned work is to make it visible. So if you were talking to the card you were trying to do, today I was going to do this, but instead I'm doing this. Having that visibility, and then you have the metric at the end to say, okay, we didn't do this card because we did this card instead. Both of those are beneficial by having it visible.
Which is something that my Scrum Master does.
Yeah.
I say, oh, so-and-so handed off this issue in this other team to me because it involves part of what we do, and he's like, okay, boom, here's a ticket, put it up on the wall, represent that work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm just thinking, here's a retro point, okay, like those should be a different color.
And at the end of the sprint, we can look at the stuff on the bottom of the wall, or whichever way your tickets move, and say, wow, we got a whole bunch of like green tickets down there. There was a lot of external ops work that happened.
So I've gone as far as to create a theme in our project in Jira, and everything's the non-project work, and I can tally up, things at the end to see what we spent the extra time.
Yeah, actually, I think in Jira we have labels or something for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it's that part of making it visible. For me, it's a bit of training management as well. If they're the ones injecting this extra work, saying, oh, well, I didn't think that was a big deal. Well, no, it is. So it's making it visible, training them, as well as the team members. If you're given something else, we want to hear about it, because that's impeding you from doing something that was planned.
Even
I like
what you mentioned earlier, what came off? Like, especially in the product owner, they brought the new hot thing. Okay, well, guess what? You lost this one here.
I agree that the team is actually, when I was a Scrum Master, that was the bigger problem, was getting them to expose that they'd been pulled to something else.
Right.
Because a lot of times, maybe they did only lose half an hour, but that's an hour that they weren't spending on the task that I thought they were. It inflates one task that makes that estimate look bad, and now we didn't meet our sprint goals, and that's definitely a big thing, is making it clear to your team that if you get pulled off for something that you didn't anticipate doing that day, just make it known. That's not necessarily a problem. Maybe that's perfectly okay, but make it known.
And in fact, our product and management team spent some time putting together an SLA with severity levels for production issues and response times and priorities from those severity levels. So, there's the drop everything and fix it now severity level. There's the we need to fix it in the next couple of days severity level. There's the, it's ugly, but there's a workaround, and we're going to fix it maybe in a couple of weeks in the next sprint or something. And then there's the, we don't like this, but we probably actually won't ever get around to fixing it level, which doesn't even actually generate like a generation, because then you just get building up your project, right? But that's really important for us as we move into demos, because it's like, hey, I found this bug in production. Is it a 1, a 2, or a 3, or a 4? If it's a 3, write a ticket, put it in triage, and we'll deal with it.
An interesting variant on that is when the product owner of a different team comes to your team because suddenly you've become a blocker for a task that they didn't realize you were a blocker on.
Yeah, I don't think I wrote that down, but that's the issue. Communication between teams when you're in a multi-team environment.
Yeah, and it's especially problematic when that product owner goes directly to the person that they know can fix it, rather than that team's product owner.
What are you talking about?
That never happens, does it?
Never.
Because that'll kill a sprint in no time flat. Or
or
exactly the length of the sprint.
Go write a ticket for that.
Any other?
Oh yeah, we got.
items
Let's see. I don't know. I
And/or
don't know. I'll keep reading as we talk. So we got poor cross-team collaboration, which kind of comes out of this, and lack of collaboration. People discuss, and I'll see if I can't find more groups.
Yeah, there's cross-team and there's intra-team.
Right.
Right, and I think the one I wrote was for cross-team, but not across separate teams. But in my case, it was within the team, because I have team members overseas. They've got the remote, so for me, it's across the team that my broad team. I have poor communication and collaboration.
12 team members sitting in 75-foot square, and I have collaboration from.
I bet. Yep.
It's like, they're right there. Why don't you just talk to them?
They'll send an email instead.
Yes. I gave you a tool. You can communicate through Jira. No, we still use it.
Right.
So, collaboration to me is when I see reoccurring, especially in new teams. The first 3 to 4 sprints, collaboration will be an item on in one form or another. We don't talk enough. We talk too much. This plays into one that we might hit there. We have too many meetings, we talk too much. Hey, if the meeting is the right value, I'd rather have you talk and do the right thing than not talk and spend time fixing it when you did the wrong thing.
Not on any of these stickies yet, but time zone issues. Do you have time zone issues?
Oh, big time. Big time zone issues, sure.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. And it's not on stickies, right?
Yeah.
But
That at least that I've seen.
Since the vendor stopped talking to us.
and
Well,
maybe
we have
that's
time zone issues with a vendor in England.
well, maybe that's part of that cross the intra-team communication that I see the email thrashing, right? Because it's a time zone. I look at it's 5 o'clock here, but that's 11 p.m. Over in France. So this doesn't work. The only thing I can do is send an email. So I do get a lot of that. Yeah, and if you've got Singapore,
But
it's
I mean,
even
here's
more.
an example of where some retro work works, is we said we're having an issue
Yep.
dealing with, getting problems fixed from the vendor who's providing the software as a service that we're using in this part of the system. Because they're in England,
Mhm.
so we've got like a 3-hour overlap in our work days, right?
Mhm.
And like this went on for a long time, and finally we brought it up in retro. We said, this is a problem, this is really impeding flow of work because we get like one cycle per day.
Yeah. Point.
And so then we took it to the vendor. We said, this is a problem, we've got a deadline, the cycle is too slow. And they said, first they said, okay, we'll send one of our guys over. We were like, okay, that's gonna cost us some money, but it's worth it if we get the work done by the end of the year when we have the deadline. And then they said, actually, rather than doing that, we're just gonna put him on your schedule. He's gonna be available and responding during the time when we're at work, and that made a huge difference. And it came out of recognizing the problem, talking about the problem, and actually looking at 2 different solutions to the problem. And it was very effective.
Mm-hmm.
For that period of time, I mean, you don't want the guys staying up till 11 o'clock every night for the rest of the year. But, for the rest of the year because we started it in the middle of December, but, forever, okay, but for that period of time when we were actually doing rapid problem solving, it was very effective.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good.
So I've got two different things that I suspect have the same solution, even though they're the opposite problem.
Interesting.
Too many meetings.
They both say too many meetings?
Well, these two say too many meetings. I have a different problem that I think is
Oh,
the opposite of it that I think has the same solution.
What, not enough meetings?
No, something blowing up in production and no one can go to the retro.
Yeah, we can tell.
So my suspicion as to the solution to that is both of those problems need to be made clear to the Scrum Master and or product owner, who can then decide, no, this meeting is not important, or we can reschedule this meeting, or something. That would be my suspicion. Anyone have any thoughts on one or other or both?
That is a solution that works for both those problems.
I'm open to others.
Shorter meetings.
Yes.
There seems to be this thing like, well, we scheduled the meeting for an hour, so it has to take an hour. But yeah.
So I'm one that always schedules meetings longer than they probably need, because I'd rather put the time in there to have the extra talk if we need it. I also almost always preface a meeting with what I call the theory of 2 feet. If this meeting is not important to you, use your feet and go do what you think is important to you. So, if you find that you're in the meeting and it's not of value, go away. And or in a team like I have right now, they get flooded with meetings. I'm blocking off calendar time just in case. So there's some combination of that. So I get yelled at, yeah, you plan too much meetings. Yeah, but you don't have to use them all. You can do what you need to do. So please.
One way we got around that was, it's I know it's hard to do across the entire organization, but at least the IT people, 300 people, we got meeting-free Wednesday. There were no meetings on Wednesdays. If you had a scheduled meeting, do it another day. Wednesday was the no meeting day. It was amazing how much people got done. And it's very hard to get. Try to respect that for the developers, but the product managers are the ones who still go into a few, but at least they let the developers not have meetings.
We client I'm currently at, they have project focused hours, so no meetings between 10 and 3. Do the 7 to 9 or the 4 or 5 for extraneous meetings. Now, project meetings, internal to 14, obviously, working that time.
That's different. That's different.
The external. So the manager's calling the team meeting to get all the VAs together. They do it at 9 a.m. and they don't go into the project.
And actually, that we did a couple of different things. One is, so David mentioned, we've got like 10 teams. If every team does a sprint review every 2 weeks, that's 5 sprint reviews every week. And it started out like each team was scheduling it at whatever time they decided was the end of their sprint. And so it would be like, oh, I got to go to 2 sprint reviews today and 1 tomorrow, and 2 on Wednesday next week, and we put them all together. So it was like 2.5 hours on Wednesday afternoon when you're going to sprint reviews for 5 teams this week and 5 teams next week. Made it predictable. And not everybody goes to all of them. I'm one of these people that I have to keep, part of my job is to keep track of what's happening across the entire 7 teams.
You actually did a really good job grouping similar areas together, so that if you're interested in one area, you can go to 2 in a row, and then.
And we're still playing with that. We're still doing retro on that. And actually, we're now going to try doing like a long sprint review every 2 weeks for the entire project, rather than each team doing it, because it's sort of a demo working software, right? Okay. Well, the whole thing is coming together into a unified, product, and so maybe that makes sense. But the other thing that we've done is block out when there's sort of a push, or when one team decides that they need to get a whole bunch of work done. We're spinning our wheels here. We want to really focus. We don't want any distractions. We're not going to have any meetings this week, and I think actually we did this for like the whole group for like all the teams for like 2 weeks once when we really had a push. And brought in breakfast and lunch, food. And we got 50% to 100% more velocity out of the teams during those 2 weeks. It was, you can't sustain that. I mean, for one thing, everybody was working a little harder because they knew it was a push, and they knew it was temporary, and we were providing food, but, so yeah. And I think there's a problem with production, I can't come to the meeting, I mean, then, yeah, your product owner, your scrum master makes a decision, either you don't need to be there, or we need to move the meeting. Right.
But I think in that particular case, you also need to look at how often is that happening. Because if that's a constant of particularly for something like retrospective or review, which are part of the cadence of the sprint, if they're constantly being canceled or moved because of emergencies, you've either got too many emergencies, and something is very, very wrong and should be looked at, or things that aren't really emergencies are being treated as emergencies, and that needs to be reevaluated. So if it's like once in a while, okay, but I mean, you can't live in a constant state of emergency.
So the interesting one.
Almost 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So
the interesting one about retro meetings is they're, to me, and there's a general premise around history, they're the most important. If you were to miss and skip that, not miss or skip any meetings, that's the one that you need to get to. And that is the one that actually ends up being most often pushed aside, rescheduled, canceled and not rescheduled. Oh, we'll get it next sprint kind of thing. So, but to me, it's one of those most important. It's the opportunity to learn and improve. So,
Absolutely.
I feel that, and it's one of the things, when we're close on time, that I was kind of running to today, is retrospectives to me being that important. one of the things I would focus on. And there's a part in one of my talks I talk about where is your retrospective not changing your perspective, as in you're just doing them just to do them. So, there's a problem there, fix what's wrong. And in the scope of tonight's meeting of mixing things up, that's the one I mix up the most. Retros to me are hardly ever the same thing 2 times in a row if I can avoid it. So I'll do one, the standard, happy face, smiley face, and delta. But I'll do the next one, the starfish, the 5 of do more of, less of, stop doing, start doing, and keep doing, and get that collection. And then the funnest one I do is the sailboat retro, where you basically go up to a board and you draw a boat. You say, okay, we're all on the boat. And we have winds that are pushing us, and you talk about what are the winds pushing you. You have the rocks underneath that are your dangers. You have the promised land you're trying to get to, and you start to identify what all those things are and draw it out and call it out. And it's a fun one to get the group together to play through. So, things like that, that to me is mixing it up, making that repetition of what we call as normal cadence actually something different. And that can be really beneficial. It's the uniqueness that keeps it lively, personally. So, Google will tell you more about all of those things.
I actually have a ton of links that will, whenever I get the notes compiled to go out, has, I think, 15 different types of retrospectives you can do. And lots of, because everyone knows Scrum traders love games, lots of games you can do. Drive home points about different styles of retros, different techniques, all sorts of stuff.
Great.
Simple games are often the most informative.
Yeah.
Teams will grab that because it's easy and they like it and it's fun.
We look forward to the notes
I will.
and the links that you have dug up for us all to share. That would be great.
Cool.
Any final comments from you guys? I know we're right at 8 o'clock, 8:01. I want to respect people's times for coming. So thanks, everyone, for coming to our January meeting. We will have a February meeting. We were just chatting about that a little beforehand. Some time ago, we did one of these things on the board and laid out topics that we wanted to hear about. And one was grassroots agile, kind of a bottom-up approach. Working with teams where it's kind of growing from the team side versus the you will do this approach. So Marius Just has agreed to give that talk, and it will be February 25th. So it'll be the 4th Wednesday in February. It will be here, same time, same place, same channel. I won't be here. I'm going to be someplace warmer for a couple weeks. So
You're saying we can't all come there to do?
you can come there. I'm mooching off family and friends, so more the merrier. But I just wanted to let everyone know we will have a meeting in February, so please stay tuned. That's the topic, Grassroots Agile. Thank you, Marius, for willing to help give that meeting, and anyone who would like to help coordinate, schedule, anything related to the meeting, let me know. I'll take any help you can provide. That might be finding food. I can give you all kinds of ideas of where to get it from, and I'll make sure I can reimburse you for it. That's pretty much it, because then I can take care of sending out all the announcements. So, is anyone there?
Anywhere.
Hmm?
Yeah, do that anywhere.
I can do that from anywhere. Right.
Sipping margaritas.
You got it. On the beach.
On the beach.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a great evening. And thank you, David and Daniel, for giving us this lively discussion. This was really helpful. Thanks so much.